Hey guys, this is Pete on the beat. I took a decision to film this video because I feel I missed to say few extremely important things in my previous upload, so this video will be related to a huge extent to my previous upload. I believe I skipped to cover few extremely important things. But in order to make the whole video more interesting, I would like to show you some gym footage, in particular some back training, core back training with a little bit of deadlifting and a little bit of band barbell row and some arm training. I basically finished the back training with some arm training. As you probably already know, I changed my split, but this is a whole different subject. So when I'm talking about food combining method in this video, I'm not saying like a specific diet combined with a specific intermittent fasting protocol or a specific eating pattern such as the OMAD or the warrior diet or the 8-16 aka lean gains. So the thing I'm talking about is basically, should you combine fats and carbohydrates on one sitting, and should you combine fats and carbohydrates in long term, like during the course of the month or during the course of the week. So right off the bat, I definitely believe no, and here I would like to explain you why I feel this way about this subject. So again, this is my take on the subject. It is not necessary for you to do the same things such as I do. So let's say, for example, you want to burn fat as primary energy source. You really want to adapt to this deep state of ketosis, that deep ketogenic state, as a lot of people prefer to call it. Every time you ingest carbohydrates, this will definitely kick you out of ketosis. Despite what the other people want to believe, this will definitely take you out of the fat burning mode. It really doesn't matter how much fat you're going to consume with those carbohydrates. Carbohydrates always burn faster, and your body will always use the carbohydrates first. Matter of fact, I talk a lot about this in my previous videos and whatnot. Your body prefers to stay in this carb burning aka fat storing mode, and this is one of the biggest mistakes plenty of people, especially the people who come from a completely ketogenic diet. This is a pretty common situation that I observe with people who come from an entirely ketogenic diet and they want to switch to something that is more of a paleo type of a protocol, and what they do is they start to add the carbohydrates on top of their extremely high fat intake, and for a week they become bloated, they gain weight, they become puffy and all of that crap, and they believe the reason for this is because of the carbohydrates. No, the reason is not because of the carbohydrates. The reason is because of this unneeded caloric overload. The second extremely important detail that plenty of people prefer to neglect is the fact that when you consume carbohydrates and when you burn carbohydrates, you are not really able to access the fats, you see. So incorporating additional amounts of dietary fat is the last thing that you want to do, because all of those extra calories from the fats, as you probably already know, the fats are the most calorie dense macronutrient out there. You're going to store all of that fat, and your body is not going to be able to effectively utilize those fats and your stubborn fat as well. You see, this is how your body works. Your body is either a fat burning machine or a sugar burning machine, aka fat storing machine, and believe it or not, it prefers to stay in this fat storing mode because the way it operates is like this. It wants to make sure that during periods of absence of food, there will be plenty bioavailable energy in forms of stubborn fat. You probably already know that I talk about all of those 40,000 calories. This is the reason why I believe like the ketogenic diet, it's a bit more practical, or actually a lot more practical when it comes to not eating and when it comes to doing OMAD and all of that stuff. In my personal opinion, definitely do not combine carbohydrates and fats. This is just my personal opinion. On top of everything, you can stay on some extremely like drastic caloric deficit, but there is no real reason to combine fats on top of the carbohydrates. And you probably already know the recommendations of the Iron Guru. I'm extremely inspired by the Iron Guru and Vince Gironda. The Iron Guru, Vince Gironda, and Serge Nubret. Serge Nubret was never consuming like fats on top of his red meat and rice. Most definitely there were some fats in the red meat, and the recommendations for refeeding of the Iron Guru are basically those: when you have a refeed day, cut out all the fats and basically lower your protein. And I definitely believe like the protein fast or reducing the amounts of the protein you consume when you want to do something like a carb refeed on a ketogenic diet makes perfect sense. Because believe it or not, it really doesn't matter what you're going to do, you're going to enter this fat storing mode, at least for a while. And there is another situation that is pretty popular, and nowadays it's another craze. Like, again, based on my observation, this is most commonly seen with people who follow some kind of a paleo protocol. This is hacking the rice technique. You probably already know. I was hacking my rice for quite a while back in 2016, but plenty of people believe if they add a stupid amount of MCTs on top of their white rice or something like this German product, coconut mousse. This is like amazing product. The white basmati rice, when you add the coconut mousse on top of the rice, it tastes like unbelievable. They believe if they hack the rice with some MCTs and whatnot, this will actually make the carbohydrate content from the rice disappear. And they feel like if they wake up with mild presence of ketones, that actually means their bodies will not store the carbohydrates, and this is complete nonsense. It doesn't work like this. And if you don't believe me, I highly encourage you to basically try both ways. Try to do a carb refeed with like protein and some high quality carbohydrates, for example sweet potatoes, yams, some veggies, or some high quality white basmati rice, such as I do, and then use the same amounts of carbohydrates, the same amounts of proteins, veggies, and add stupid amounts of fat, and let me know, is there any difference on the next day or in long term. So that was basically my take on the subject, should you combine carbs and fats in the same meal. Right now I would like to discuss the other situation, should you combine like high fat days and high carbohydrate days during the course of the week or during the course of the month. Most definitely yes, if you want, if you believe this will make you feel better. If you believe your body is going to respond great to it, then most definitely do it. Here I would like to point that I most definitely agree with this principle or statement that is promoted by plenty of those paleo bloggers, such as for example Mark's Daily Apple and Paleo Hacks. You're probably familiar with both of those sites for paleo dieting and whatnot. They're great, don't get me wrong. So the statement is this: you should cycle everything during the course of the year, because this is basically how the things in nature work. This is inspired by the seasons and all of that stuff. And I believe, so to a certain extent, this is like a great option. This is what I did in 2016. Back in 2016 I ate like steaks, eggs, sour cream, and the typical things that I prefer to eat, as you probably already know, like stupid amounts of high cholesterol foods and high fat and whatnot. And during the summer period I stayed mostly on white basmati rice, super like extra lean cuts of red meat, grass-fed beef, and some colorful veggies, not those like cauliflower and broccoli and all that stuff, but like red peppers, some carrots, and those types of veggies. And I felt really well, actually. I felt really good, and I was able to lift a lot heavier weights, no doubt. But during like long-term staying on carbohydrates, I believe I'm less inspired for other things, for example for composing music. This is the thing that I believe my brain is not able to do that well when it runs on carbohydrates. But again, this is just a personal preference. And in the end of the day, I also believe it's all about self-experimentations and self-observations and self-analysis. So you can try to do both ways. Do a ketogenic diet and do a carb day by adding plenty of carbohydrates on top of your fat content. Then on the next day probably try to hack the rice with some form of MCTs, and then try to do a ketogenic diet and incorporate some only high carb, moderate protein days with like extra quality carbohydrates. And feel free to let me know what happens in each of those situations. By the way, if you're based in Europe or especially in Germany, I definitely encourage you to try this like white basmati rice imported straight from India, and try to hack the rice with MCTs and maybe add this coconut mousse, or do it only with the coconut mousse. The taste is out of this world, but it can also make you bloated. And if you're a subscriber to this YouTube channel, you probably already know that I do not stay like completely ketogenic during the course of the year. I do some carbohydrates here and there. You probably already know the types of the carbs that I typically prefer to consume, but when I do it, I also switch to a certain extent the protein sources that I consume. From the fattiest cuts of red meat and plenty of whole eggs, I will switch to only like leanest possible cuts of grass-fed beef, and I will add some hormone-free, antibiotic-free, organic, leanest possible chicken breast as an additional protein source, because my body definitely responds better when I combine two protein sources. So when I go completely ketogenic, I'll definitely do like fatty fishes and eggs, or some fatty cuts of meats and eggs. And when I go with some safe starches, as they prefer to call them accordingly to the Paul Jaminet's Perfect Health Diet, I will do like white basmati rice with the leanest possible cuts of meat and the chicken that I mentioned. There is no real need to combine carbohydrates and fats, and as long as for the properties of both, I believe like both are able to provide some benefits. Like, this is the best way I can describe it. And yeah, this is basically everything I wanted to say. I really wanted to take this out of my system. I'll probably put both of those videos on the same blog post on my website, that is PETEONTHEBEAT.com. And yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up for now. I would like to thank you for watching this video. Please stay tuned for more, and good luck with figuring out what are the actual food combinations or dieting and intermittent fasting combinations that will allow you to get the best results and make those OMAD gains. Peace.